Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this session we are going to be covering the Q&A that happened from Blizzard. They did a Q&A for us over on the competitive Overwatch subreddit, it looks like, sort of when they released this stuff, or after they released this stuff, these happened a few days ago, they said Q&A in an hour. They did their Q&A. We'll be going through some of this. This is our source material for the actual answers, but someone on the Blizzard forums, Overwatch forums, put together a nice summary of the balance related responses that were put out there. So I'm going to start by reading through these. For things that we're interested in, we'll go back over here and find the source stuff, for example, the support one. And then I'll get into what my thoughts are on that, but I'm also going to want to hear what your thoughts are on it. So feel free to throw chat up there as you have questions. If you're watching this as a video in the future, set your comments down below there. Chat, I will respond to you. You know the drill. I'm going to talk about what I think about this. I'm curious what you think about this. We can have a discussion, that sort of thing. But I am mostly going to get through at least the bullet points before I get too much into chat. If you want to interrupt me, well, super chats are the way to do that. So, our first big thing here is Zarya is actually okay. So, here we are. Here's these bullet points on what the balance team said. Zarya is actually seen to be too strong as opposed to too weak. Opposite feedback from the pros and their internal playtest, as she is always high charge. So this immediately concerns me, and this immediately concerns me because it tells me that the devs don't understand their game, which has been a little bit of a concept for her. Zarya, when played correctly, has always been high charge. Always high charge is just how Zarya is played. Like, getting to high charge for Masters GM Zarya's is not some like gargantuan challenging task. It is a problem. If you can't, within your first, say, 2 bubbles, so 1 cooldown cycle, or at worst 2 cooldown cycles, get and maintain basically 80% charge. Like, that's how the hero works. The hero doesn't actually function if you're not able to get her and keep her at high charge. So my concern here is that, oh, she's always at high charge, so other people are able to get her high charge that aren't in Masters, GM, Diamond, whatever. Like, that's not necessarily a problem. So saying she's now too strong, I sort of look at and go, that doesn't really make sense. From that standpoint. Now, she may be too strong because she may be one of the better enablers. The truth is, if you compare, and we talked about this in the Real video, Zarya with a Reaper, with a Mei, with something like that, that's actually in the DPS category, not in the tank category, and we'll see a bit on Doomfist and how they may be moving him in the future. If you compare him with someone who has a little initiation power, a little brawling power, pair Zarya with them, that might make Zarya a really good hero because it actually gives a team quite a bit of initiation power by stacking Zarya with someone who's good at that close range. She gets energy, she's able to do those things. She's still able to off tank while having someone else who can walk in. You know, Mei has her wall and then invulnerability with Ice Block. Reaper has Wraith and a bigger health pool, good close range, ability to drop on people, sort of like a Winston would. Like, we could see some good things there. We could definitely see her being powerful, but because she's always high charge doesn't really seem like why. So that concerns me a little bit, the reasoning that they're giving. Not that she seems too powerful. I could totally see her being one of the more powerful tanks in 5v5 with how she's been designed and especially with some of the changes. If we take a look over here, let's see, Zarya, see if we can find it. Let's go to the top just to make sure. Okay. I just want to find the Zarya post from them. Okay. Good mix of things. Okay, so this is where they talked about Zarya expect. We had a good mix of things that we expected and things we didn't. Probably the biggest surprise for me was just how good they thought Sombra was in the iteration. She was. She was good, and if you guys didn't think that, I'm concerned. We had been playtesting these changes for at least a few weeks, and while she felt strong, she never felt like she was literally taking over the games or anything. Then you guys aren't using good enough playtesters. Obviously, when you put them in the hands of pros with amazing game sense and coordination, I mean, some of those games had pretty good game sense and coordination. Some of those games really didn't have great coordination. Shaky. Makes confirming eliminations a lot easier. We've since focused a bit on her numbers and tweaked her down to keep her under control. A lot of talk about Zarya's bubble cooldown as it exists now. Has there been any talk of potential changes? Good amount of iteration done on Zarya's bubble. Josh already touched on Zarya's stuff in another thread, but she's not set in stone. She was always going to be a bit tricky to tweak in the 5v5 environment. I feel like there's something where they give us more here. Okay, here it is. Sorry about that, guys. So this is in response to the pros described Zarya as particularly weak in the tank lineup. Some even suggested she felt like she was nerfed with the bubble cooldowns. And they responded, Blizzard, this was specifically Josh, the hero designer, says, this is an interesting one. We're keeping an eye on it since internally the resounding feedback has been that Zarya is far in the other direction, and many think she's too strong and constantly high energy with being able to bubble herself twice. Being able to bubble herself twice, being able to bubble anyone twice is a little bit dangerous, don't get me wrong, because you get to adapt her bully playstyle, where it used to be you go in when you have bubble available on Zarya, and you start playing more aggressive, you start off-angling harder, you start going in more when you have bubble available, then you bubble yourself when they actually start shooting at you, when you actually start taking damage, but that's also your warning to either get out or finish your target if it's a more duel type situation. So having two kind of lets her break that a little bit and be like, I can kind of not be careless with my first bubble, but I can continue to stay in after I've activated my second bubble, and I can go super bully mode. Like bully 2. Like, wait, what? You can keep doing this? I do see some level of concern there, especially because you'll be a stronger Zarya when you've used that second bubble. You'll have more energy, that sort of thing. So I can see that. But that's not because she's constantly high energy. That's because she can sort of break her way that she currently plays the game with personal bubbles. There's a couple details that get overlooked with this new shared cooldown setup, in that the duration of the bears have been extended slightly. We started at 3 seconds and it's gone down to 2.5. Yeah, that would do it. Making her bubbles potentially last longer, so it's even easier to gain charge, would be a reason that people would think she's higher charge. Because even if you use a bubble poorly, if the bubble lasts 50% longer than it used to, it's got more opportunity to either get shot at, whoops, spam damage, or more time that people have to actively choose to leave it alone. And leaving someone alone for 3 seconds or 6 seconds if you go bubble is just undoable. You can't not shoot at a target that's melting you for 6 seconds. There's a reason that Reaper can't shoot you when he's wraithing, that Mei can't shoot you when she's in her ice block. You can't ignore someone for 6 seconds. So I could see that, that's too much. They then toned it down to 2.5. Cooldown timers start ticking immediately, unlike on live where the barrier has to be destroyed or timeout first. Right, so you get more total bubbles available to you from an uptime perspective. They last longer. That makes sense. Okay. So if the barrier isn't broken, your cooldown is coming up quicker than on live by some amount. The current iteration cooldown is 9 seconds, and it's easy to tune lower if she isn't performing well, but at some point it breaks, and too many of those barriers quickly gets annoying to try to play against. Right. The flexibility of the barrier yourself twice in succession, or an ally twice, is also powerful utility in and of itself. Using both barriers at exactly the same time is the worst case scenario for cooldown management, but sometimes necessary. Quite powerful, actually. Part of the interesting gameplay can be making that choice. So I'd probably agree that she could be quite powerful, especially if played with the right heroes, who may or may not have been available to the pros, and that might be part of the issue in the public playtest, not the public playtest, in the playtest that the public got to see that the pros got to do. The pros may have not been allowed to use the right heroes to pair with Zarya, or they may not have found their way to the right strategies. I could definitely see how this iteration would be powerful. But again, the reasoning that is being given here of she's always high charge, well, maybe she's always high charge because people can't not shoot at her for 6 seconds or 5 seconds or 2.5 seconds, or she's getting extra damage on her bubble because it lasts longer, that sort of thing. So even poor bubble use is constantly making her high charge, but her being high charge in and of itself isn't a concern. Like, she's already high charge if she's being played correctly in the current game. So the why concerns me a little bit here, but okay. Zen and Mercy seem to be very strong because of offensive capabilities and res in 5v5. Maybe. I'm still concerned about this res, because while yes, a res is more powerful when it brings 20% of your team back into play, it's also much harder to protect a res. Obviously a Reinhardt can protect a res, a Zarya can protect a res, a D.Va can protect a res. These are all things that happen, but with one less tank on the board and with the battlefield having shifted in a bigger way by having one person eliminated, I'm still not convinced that as we get better, reses will be something that actually happen all that often, except when we're talking about range situations where, hey, a Widow shoots an Ashe, that sort of thing, and then the Ashe gets raised. We'll see. We'll see. Zen Ana being strong, yeah, we kind of knew that. Okay. Support seemed to be safer without a second tank, with the exception of Sombra or Snipers, although good cover use can counter this. Okay. I think this is going to be the most controversial thing. Is this all we have on supports? Okay, we may come back to this because I want to keep going through these. Sombra suggested to be OP currently and has already been nerfed in the hands of pros. She was far better than their internal playtest. Yep, we know that. You guys, I mean, you had to recognize she was good. You just had to. Bastion has been buffed since the playtest, which they were planning to do anyways, and as he seems to be underpowered. I agree with that. I think he did need buffs based on what we saw in the playtest there. Like, he's already a better hero than he used to be, but now that he's a more normal hero and not like just this turret that has stupid amounts of damage but no mobility, if he's going to be this more flexible hero, his level of power does need to go up a bit. Like, he's already a better hero, but now he's actually competing with real other flexible heroes, and he needs to be better to play at that level. So that's reasonable. Doom as a tank, still just an experiment, would likely have less damage and an extra defensive ability, keeping his CC. Does he need an extra defensive ability? He's already got 3 abilities that move him, plus a passive that gives him, additional shields. Plus he's got an ability to get out with his ult when he has that up, like, as well as recharge his other abilities. I'm really not convinced that he needs an actual defensive ability on top of what he has. Movement is defense. Those are escape abilities. I know they're also his engage, but that's flexibility for you. He's got a passive that gives him shields. You can play with his health numbers if you want. You can give him more health. You can make his abilities give him more shields when he hits. Obviously, you'd exchange some of this for decreasing damage or decreasing the amount that he moves people around, something. But, like, I don't really know that he needs a true defensive ability. If he's going to get a defensive ability, his hitbox probably also needs to get bigger. In terms of, other people being able to shoot at him. I'm going to want to see what they do there. Him keeping CC is reasonable if they move him to the tank category with their design philosophy, though. I can see his passive being removed, maybe. Yeah, if they remove his passive, you can give him a true defensive. That's fine. I don't know what that defensive is going to be. If it's going to be an adaptive shield like Hammond, where you click it and you get your shield. If it's going to be something that's a damage reduction type thing, like Fortify with Orisa. If it's going to be putting up a barrier or going invulnerable, like a Reinhardt or an Ice Block or something like that, we'll have to see. They're testing... Oh! They're testing Rocket Punch, knocking back multiple people into walls. Okay, so they would, if it's going to hit multiple people into walls, it probably needs to do less damage. And again, he probably needs to be a bigger character. Like, he probably needs a bigger model to justify a punch that can hit multiple people, unless, like, one person just ping-pongs into the next. Like, my thought is, okay, we have a bigger fist that comes in here, or maybe, like, you just have an animation around it that makes it a bigger fist, something like that, that then is able to send multiple people into the wall. Or is it going to be a case where, hey, the fist comes in here, whatever, fist comes in here, boxing glove for some reason, apparently it's Bastion, and it knocks someone into someone else, and they both go into the wall. Like, I'm curious what we're thinking there. But it could be interesting. I probably need to make him a bigger character, though, if they do some of this. And I don't know how much they're going to want to change, like, oh, now you're just a bigger hero, because you sort of have to change how he looks to do that. They targeted having less ults with the tank ultimate generation reduction and 5v5 implicitly generating less ult charge. Do you mean implicitly generating less ult charge because there's less people that you eliminate in a team wipe? Do you mean because there's only 5 people on the board in the poke phase? Do you mean hey, in the 5v5 mode, we're simply also going to tune everyone's ult charge down? I think the former. We have a super chat coming in from Adam in Charge for 199. Great content. 1 second nade CD for Overwatch 2, please. Thank you, Adam in Charge, for the 199 super chat, requesting a 1 second nade cooldown for Anna for Overwatch 2. I don't think that one will be making it in there. I think nade is already pretty powerful in this when there's not an off tank. Like, it's so much easier as Anna to get a nade or a sleep against a Reinhardt than it is against a Reinhardt Diva. It's so much easier against a even Reinhardt Sigma than it is Reinhardt Diva. Like, just not being able to run into Reinhardt and Diva at the same time on the enemy team is going to give Anna greater ability to get her abilities off for value. Okay. In internal playtests, supports were the most impactful role by a wide margin, so we do have another thing on supports here. We're going to go over to the source material for this in a minute, because I expect this to be the most interesting, controversial piece of this. The in-combat healing reduction rule is just a balancing shortcut for the balance team, so they can just tune a single number from playtests into playtest to find the right amount of healing that should be in the game, rather than tuning each hero individually. Which I get, and that's a fine lever to play with in the short term. My concern is sort of that you're still there, that you're still at that playing with that sort of number type thing. Like, I get that, and that is a faster lever than going, okay, well, let's adjust Mercy's up and Zen's, or let's adjust Mercy's down and Zen's down and Anne's down and this down, and oh shoot, now let's adjust them back up, because it's like, okay, well, you don't really want to necessarily do straight percent adjustments necessarily to the actual heroes themselves, because then you end up with weird stuff like, yes, Harmony Orb is healing 17 health per second. What a weird amount. That sort of thing. But, okay, I'm not, we'll see. We'll see. Again, going to come back to the support thing because I think there's going to be the most thought, the most discussion around this. Current balancing is taking into account unreleased and reworked heroes. Okay, so that makes sense. Is that because there's a version of the game that the pros weren't allowed to play where those are getting played? Is that what's happening? Or are you just going, yes, in our mind, there's this hero that's going to be able to do this that we haven't actually put into any of the tests yet, and we should balance around that potentially being there? Because that's pretty hard to do accurately. So I hope they were in the game, the pros just weren't allowed to play them, or there's a different version, of the client where they're available. New heroes will be discussed closer to launch, of course, that's how marketing works. Tank still tweaked to find the right power level. All changes might have a different impact when it gets to the pro level, so all needs to be seen how it holds up. Yeah, I mean, changes, I think we've already seen that some of the changes have had different impacts at the pro level, both in Overwatch historically, back when, it was like, lower ranks would complain Reaper was OP, and higher ranks would go, you can't use him for anything. And, we've seen that constantly. Bastion, another example, that sort of thing. They changed Reaper to make him a little more flexible, make more sense at some of the higher level play. But there were times when they did that, like when they gave him the full life leech, that just made him a monster at lower levels. So that's always been true. I hope they're getting enough high-level examples to be considering this. Discord and Duplicate always being on tanks is being looked at. I mean, that already happens a lot. How many Diva clones have we seen? We've seen a lot of Diva clones in Overwatch 1. We've seen quite a bit of that, in fact. Discord, tanks, no, Discord lives on them. Like, yes, when someone else jumps onto Zen, the Discord gets on them, but that's like, Discord lives on tanks for the beginning of actual combat and kind of always has, so I don't really see a need to look at that. Yeah. Unless they're trying to make tank more fun by getting rid of that. Or maybe it's even more frustrating for the tanks that Discord is always on them because there's only one of them. So it's more frustrating because instead of it being split between two tanks, it's always on the same tank, and they just feel like they can't play the game. I can see that. Duplicate doesn't really concern me. Like, that doesn't really concern me at all. That's just going to happen unless you feel like tank ults are so much more powerful than the rest of the cast ultimates, but that doesn't look to be the case. Like, yes, tank ults are better than a lot of DPS ults, but that's not really a concern. Like, that's working in the Overwatch 1, so I'm not concerned. Okay, so let's jump over to the support stuff because... Okay, I want to see a little bit more what they have to say about supports because that is going to be sort of the fuel for the prime part of this discussion, I think. So far, broadly speaking, we found that supports are often more safe in a 5v5 environment because there is one less tank trying to dive and take them out. There are instances where this isn't true, like Sombra enter rework trying to assassinate them, or being sniped easier without a lot of barriers to hide behind. That's not really how support's solved. I mean, sometimes you've got a Zen behind an Orisa barrier, sometimes you've got an Ana behind a Sigma barrier, but like, that's not really how they deal with snipers. You deal with snipers by, oh, my ball is on the sniper, it's safe to open, it's safe to peek, that sort of thing. Oh, there's a sniper, I'm going to heal from an angle until we actually make our push, and now that we've made our push, I'm going to open the angle. It's not really a matter of hiding behind barriers to deal with snipers. And again, that sort of betrays a lack of understanding of the game that I find a little. Again, it's not like you never use barriers to deal with a sniper on an off angle. Like, okay, I'll drop my barrier. There's an off angle. Anna, please shoot that widow. Make her move. Try to eliminate her. That sort of thing. Like, yeah, that happens occasionally, but that's not the prime way to deal to tie up snipers to let your supports get offensive value. Um, Interesting. In those situations, sometimes it's a matter of just trying to position more carefully, or maybe Sombra just being a bit too OP right now. A bit too OP? She was the most powerful DPS character hands down. Initially, we were worried that supports without mobility to escape might be weak in this environment, but so far we've actually seen Zen Ana being very strong instead of weak because of the nature of their offensive capabilities in a 5v5 environment. Okay. So that's a little concerning potentially for main support players, though less so Mercy. Mercy's making the list of good supports apparently, because you're seeing hey, the offensive power is just worth so much, Peel isn't worth as much, the off tank can't dive. That seems to be the direction that they think. I want to see if we've got more here from them. Unfortunately, they didn't do like the red box highlights here. Okay. So far, role passives have been great. No, that's more on role passive, so. Okay. What is your planned direction for the design balance of support heroes for making sure they are still impactful? Even in this 5v5 environment, supports are still feeling very impactful. In many ways, they're actually more impactful than in Overwatch 1 currently. In 5v5, there's less damage going around to both teams. Coupled with the ability to focus heavily onto your single tank, it becomes actually easier for both teams to sustain longer fights. And probably what they mean is not in the version that they showed us where they had heavy healing reduction. That was probably their initial finding, and that's probably what is adjusting his commentary here. I don't necessarily think he's going to find it true with some of the healing nerfs that they've put in there for that to be true. It's hard to really know what he's talking about there, whether he's talking about previous versions that he's seen where that wasn't there, or he's thinking about it without it there because he knows that healing nerf in that form isn't going to be there, even if they're actually going to adjust the real healing numbers down. So I think there's some of that, but yes, there is something that is true of, hey, there's less people to keep alive, there's one less target for you to think about, and there's one less target that's likely to feed. You know, you're not going to have that diva that's just feeding a ton of health and your Anna's having to pick between my diva's feeding or do I try to heal my Reinhardt, who's also spending a lot of health, but he's spending his health to do damage in reasonable Reinhardt ways. Shoot, I can't keep both up, that sort of thing. And the solution was generally you let your diva take a trip to baby diva form in those situations, but you're not going to have those situations. You're only going to have one big target to heal there, so it's less things to pay attention to. It's also just less total things to pay attention to for moving around to Harmony or moving around for your BAP shots, that sort of thing. So I can see that where they're coming from, and you are getting dove by one less target. That said, you're also getting less peel. We're going to have to really see how good a job teams do, because I think if you set up reasonable dives, and you should still be able to set up 2 to 3 directional dives, I don't necessarily see like, oh, I can heal things better, but could you save yourself type thing, especially with some of the stuff like longer CDs, DPS moving faster, that sort of thing. Like, I think this leads us back to a dive style of play with multiple directions is very good, which is a place that we are right now in the game, so that doesn't necessarily bother me. But maybe that brings back some of the peel interest. But then you don't have Brig with Bash, so who knows? Okay, in 5v5, though certainly something like Repair Pack is a lot less interesting. If your Repair Pack and Harmony Orb are weaker in combat, like that's sort of their point. You want your Repair Pack working in combat, your Harmony Orb working in combat. That's sort of their point in some ways more so than and then, I mean, Ana healing, it all matters in combat. Okay, that's fine. In 5v5, there's less damage going around to both teams, coupled with the ability to focus heavily on your single tank. It actually becomes easier for both teams to sustain longer fights. Less damage going around. Why is there less damage going around? Well, because you don't have an off tank, and off tanks tend to be somewhat damage heavy, could be part of it, because you again can't take as aggressive angles, or is there less damage going around because people are afraid to break chokes, and if they break chokes they get blown up, so we're sort of in a waiting phase type thing. That becomes a question. Okay, which leads directly to the next question. It seems like you want to move away from healing, considering the 25% healing reduction, but you also nerfed the utility with the removal of Brigstun and cooldown increase on Ana's Sleep Dart. Some people have brought up that maybe you want supports to frag more, but why play a support over a DPS at that point? It's just very confusing. What are you trying to do? Okay, two parts to this question, so let Jeff break it down. The healing reduction was an attempt at combating the first question/answer here, where sometimes fights can sustain for too long, and it felt like it was too hard to confirm eliminations with one less player on each team dealing damage. Yeah, that sort of makes sense, but that only makes sense if you're trying to eliminate teams front to back. If you're trying to eliminate their front lines rather than going around to deal with stuff. Like if it's going to make Brawl, perhaps Brawls are going to last longer if you go Reinhardt versus Reinhardt, swing at each other. Like, yeah, there's less total damage coming out because there's less on the board, but you also don't have that Zarya bubble to enable it. You don't have that defense matrix to give it clean swings. So, like, I'm shaky on that, but I understand where they're coming from. There's one less person who's dealing damage on the board, so that proportionately makes your healing stronger. On the flip side, like, okay, yes, but sorry, what was I saying here? Right, you can sustain a fight like that, but that doesn't mean you can sustain a fight where, again, you properly take angles. So, like, this is Reinhardt versus Reinhardt. That's one thing. Yes, you can sustain the Reinhardt longer, maybe, but, like, let's go back to some of the more classic Overwatch, where we originally had, not originally, but we had Genji Tracer Dive that later evolved into Tracer Soldier Dive. And part of the reason this evolved into Tracer Soldier Dive was, yes, the flexibility that it allowed for, but part of it was we decided, wait, instead of trying to race to eliminate each other's backlines, standard dive, why don't we go, hey, the Winston jumps in and we try to eliminate the Winston and the D.Va that jump in. So, like, okay, let's take them. This would be considered eliminating a team front to back. You take out their tanks first and then go back to deal with their supports, versus back to front would be we jump in and we try to eliminate their supports, and then once their supports are eliminated, we can clean up their tanks and DPS or dive DPS without having to worry about them getting healed. So that would be eliminating a team in two different ways. And yeah, the fight could potentially be slower if you're trying to eliminate teams front to back, but if you're going back to front, it should still be faster. Like, yes, you have less pieces to move around the board to take them out, and they have less pieces to answer with, but like that look, you look at that, and if we're increasing the cooldown on sleep, we only have one direction that our tank can really deal with there. We don't have the super flexible tank, or maybe we do. Maybe we're running D.Va instead, but I don't think D.Va's just going to get crushed by Brawl if that's what you do. But okay, then you can run a D.Va and you can peel here. So Zarya makes sense. She can help someone else frontline and help bubble back here. Again, that sounds like an argument for Zarya to be a good hero. I look at that and I really do go, hey, this is okay, but I think you're just running into your guys don't haven't evolved to play the game correctly yet. And the pros probably aren't either, because the pros need time to iterate to figure it out, and did they bring their coaches along? That, and we are trying to make poke damage be more meaningful. Why? Why? Why do we want poke damage to be more meaningful? I don't necessarily mind it. Like, I don't mind if we go back to early Overwatch when Lucio and Mercy healing wasn't very much. So, yes, poke damage was sort of more meaningful back then because it took longer to heal back up from, which the other time had more team to free rotate to take surrounds on you when things happen. I don't necessarily mind that. Yeah, I'm not going to object to that. Okay. Right now, even in Overwatch 1, sometimes it can feel like shooting an enemy is doing nothing but feeding your enemy support's ultimate charge. No. No, it does not feel like that. You can't just do damage to people, you have to eliminate them. And doing damage can be fine because it slows down an enemy's ability to rotate, it forces resources out of them. If you feel like all you're doing is feeding the opponent's ult charge, you probably listened to a certain caster too much for Owl. We're quite a bit past that, and some bad coaching early in Overwatch 2 of like, oh, stop sending fire strikes. We don't want to give the support ult charge. We don't want to do this. Like, there's specific times when we really care about support ult charge, specifically surrounding the first fight type things, where you don't want to necessarily feed their Ana Nano for the first fight when you don't have any ults on the board, some things like that. But most of the time, no. I want to get resources out of the other team. I want to slow down the team. If I hit a fire strike through 3 people, that team doesn't really want to push right now, which makes it a little easier for my team to push, a little easier for my team to rotate, that sort of thing. Like, yeah. So, like, I don't agree with this analysis. Like, this is like, oh, the poke damage feels bad. Well, then you don't understand what the poke damage is doing. You're going, hey, we can force resources. If they don't use any resources or they don't respect that we're forcing resources, it's going to combine to sometimes get us eliminations, which then we just pounce and win. And pounce may involve walking on them, it may involve diving them, whatever. It may involve just like, hey, we got an elimination, and now you just can't walk at us because we're defending and we're a poke team. Whatever. Okay. That said, we're already backed out of this specific change internally, but you have a similar goal, so you're looking for another way to accomplish less healing. Yeah, I get it. The utility to bring stun and Ana's sleep darts are more a response to trying to chill out on crowd control effects in the game, and less about having them frag more. And a sleep dart is extremely strong, but it's also a great playmaking tool and leads to some sweet highlights and counterplay opportunities. I've seen more videos of clutch sleeps on a flying fair or Genji ult online than maybe any other support highlight, sure. So it's not like they will be removing Ana's sleep darts, but other non-tank CCs we've been taking a hard look at and trying to change them to remove CC components and buff it in other ways, which leads you to a bit of a problem, because if you go, hey, we don't want our supports to, other than Ana, who we've increased the cooldown on, to be able to do stuns, we don't want them to do stuns, and we don't want them to do a ton of healing. Like, we want them to do some healing, but like one solution to a support protecting itself would be, okay, we're going to self-heal for more. Like, so you make Nade self-heal her for more, or be on a shorter cooldown, or you go, your options are sort of like, you can have stuns to protect yourself, you can have a ton of mobility to get away, which is, okay, that's fine. That would be the Mercy, the Lucio design. Or you can have a lot of self-healing, or some sort of like defensive, again, give fortify type thing to a support, which those are sort of the 3 options you can play with, or you just give them very, very high offensive power and tell them frag out. This is actually like what dive originally was. It was your Zen was supposed to just frag to survive. Like, that's what it was about. And supports on this forum really didn't like that, and they changed away from it. They moved away from it. Moira got more survivability. Brig got more survivability. So I'm okay if we're going back in that direction, but it's sort of like, how are you possibly going to... Are you going to make Brig do a lot more damage? Is that the plan? What are we looking at here? Because it's a little bit of a weird one. It's a little bit of a weird one. Again, I'm not opposed to it if we do stuff like, okay, we're going to go, Brig does a lot more damage, the high movement ones are fine, Ana is okay because even though she doesn't do a ton of damage, her abilities are so impactful. I can live with that. Like, those changes make sense. Are we okay taking away, again, a little bit of... Like, regenerative burst should mostly be useless. I hope that ability gets taken away, to be perfectly honest, especially if all supports now get a out of combat automatic regen health ability, but we'll see. Okay. Also, if Brig's Shield Bash is just a placeholder for now, is it the increased damage? Oh, did I... Okay. With no other effects on the final product, I think it wasn't super clear. All the changes that Brig Shield Bass has gone through, just from the video, some notes on how it's changed. It's lost its stun. It can go through barriers once again. This was removed. Yeah, that was during goats. They thought that would get rid of goats. Funny joke. It deals more damage once again. Damage was all but removed. Sure. Its damage now triggers Inspire. It doesn't matter. It travels much further, almost twice as far. It's much more useful as a mobility tool in this version. More damage, travels further. That lets you stage a little bit further away from a support that you're protecting. Maybe. It has a much reduced cooldown. Okay, that does help when paired with those. It's not really important how much of a cooldown reduction it has right now. It kind of is, but okay, as it's likely to change his weird rate on the balance of the game, but what's important is that having a reduced cooldown combined with further travel time makes it so she can be more aggressive. It allows her to position to shut down flank routes better. So yeah, that does matter. Okay. Okay. So that's interesting from a support perspective. Again, some of the stuff I see in here alarms me and tells me that they don't really understand some of the things they're doing. I'm sure they understand other things they're doing quite well. I see where their argument goes for, hey, supports are too powerful. I suspect that's mostly aimed at a version of supports that haven't been toned down, had their healing toned down, and clearly they are actually going to do something that tones down the healing. I think there's also going to be a, oh, wow, the way to beat these teams, especially if healing doesn't get toned down, is go around the tanks and get on their backline, get map control, do those sorts of things. And I think there was a little bit, especially when we saw the halftime match, of teams like forgetting how to play the game. We've done a few reviews of Overwatch 2, and teams like forgetting how to play the game. Again, Shock looked like they got it, and they're like, no, we'll play real compositions, we'll play them in a real way that makes sense. Their opponents figured it out about halfway through and went, right, we can play real Overwatch 2. But then when we looked at the halftime game, that was, what, Gladiators and someone else. They mixed the teams up a little. I forget. That one was like a, well, we're just going to forget how to play the game and treat it like it's a new game completely, those sort of things. I think once we get over that, we're going to find that you can go around front lines. Like, again, Dive doesn't have to go through barriers, it can go around them. Poke doesn't try to break barriers, it surrounds them and says you can't use them in all directions. I think once we do that, you're going to find it's very hard to rotate into a Poke team that is set up multiple angles with just one Reinhardt shield. Not having a Sigma shield or a D.Va defense matrix to answer a second direction when you try to rotate your team through a kill box is going to be very hard, and your high level of healing on, you're having less target steal probably doesn't make a huge difference. And same thing with, okay, you don't have a D.Va or a Sigma to protect your Ana from being dove or to protect your Zen from being dove, and your Brig doesn't have a stun. Well, okay, if I have Tracer plus Echo plus Hammond, I mean, yes, my backline is vulnerable during that. I'm not sure I care. I think I just go back to running a Lucio with whatever I have here. A Lucio with my own Zen, for example, to keep my backline away from your backline because I just want to keep it alive and I don't have my own D.Va or Sigma to do it. So I do this and go, how are you possibly going to answer this? Like maybe with a Zarya double bubbling, like bubble to protect, if you're running D.Va yourself to answer this, like maybe that sort of works, but like then you've got no initiation power. I don't really think so. I think something like this off the off the top, if off the just like initial look based on what I'm seeing described, this is going to work very strongly as a solution. And I suspect this is, again, similar to what Reels was saying of, hey, mobility is probably going to go back to being at a premium. And I think it's hard for that, on tanks we were talking about, but I think it's hard for that to not be true if we're removing CC. Like, games I've always sort of had a balanced paradigm of mobility is really, really good because mobility is flexibility. It's what we were talking about with Doomfist of, okay, his moves, you can do damage with them, you can initiate with them, you can get out with them. Like, mobility is flexibility. And some of the only answers that work for mobility is you give things without mobility way, way, way higher stats, so they just do more damage, have more health, that sort of thing, or you give them CC. And if we're reducing the amount of CC, and it looks like pretty significantly, we probably end up with this being king again, unless we just make the stats silly. Like, okay, McCree headshots just one shot, 200 HP heroes. Well, okay then, fine. Okay, if he's not gonna have, he can. That'll work. You know what? If he's gonna have 275 HP and he one shots 200 HP heroes, and he doesn't have his flashbang, yeah, that'll probably work. He'll probably be relevant. But like, these are generally the three solutions. These are your paradigms for working with a game that has mobility in it, and this is probably a lean back towards mobility as king. But we'll see. We'll see. It could be that mobility isn't king because Zarya is just so good with her ability to put bubbles around, for example. Could be. Could be. It could be that mobility isn't king because, the map design just lets poke heroes be so powerful. I doubt it. But I'm curious now what you guys think. I know I just went on a long tangent here. I went quite a bit before getting to chat, but that's because I had thoughts. There was quite a bit of interesting stuff to cover here. So I'm going to catch up on chat. I am going to catch up from beginning to end, so it may take a little bit for me to get caught up on you guys, but that gives you more time to get your thoughts, get your questions in there. I may not recognize exactly what time you're referring to with some of your comments here, so I might have to jump back to the end, or I might have to skip it if I don't understand. But here we go. Val appreciated the 5-minute warning on the stream. No problem. If people would like to catch streams in the future, the best way to do that is to join my Discord in the description below, and you can then go down and react in Get Roles to become a watcher, at which point you'll get pings when I go live. So you can catch these things live, be here for these discussions, to ask questions if you like. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you are enjoying this type of content. Overwatch wish list. Give Mercy 2 stacks of GA and nerf Mercy heal. Maybe. Okay. Crunch is glad we're covering this because this is an interesting thing. Okay. Zarya, I think, is a disconnect between low ranks and high ranks for this. The L pros can trigger discipline and everything else better than ladder, I think. I mean, the L pros can trigger discipline, but Zarya still doesn't struggle to get energy in high level Overwatch. So yeah. We saw from the PvP playtest that playtesters we saw from the PvP live stream that playtesters aren't super high rank or anything. That's why Zarya looks OP for them, I believe. Yeah, I think there is some truth to that. I do think they also, if they experimented with 3-second bubbles, like that's a lot of time to decide, am I going to shoot it? Like, am I going to shoot at her or not shoot at her? That is forever to not shoot at her during. Now they've since changed it to 2.5-second bubbles, but the 2.5-second bubbles that she can do on herself twice in a row or do on a different target twice in a row, like that is so long to not be able to stun a Reaper that's blossoming, for example. Like, okay, I would like to sleep dart that. I would still like to sleep dart that. Like, we're back to 4 seconds of Matrix over our Reaper when he's blossoming, over our Pharah while she's barraging. Like, how am I supposed to solve that? And you have to break the diva first. Well, you have to break the Zarya first, or you have to force the bubbles elsewhere first. Okay. CD starting immediately means she can use 2 bubbles back to back on herself and then bubble herself again 4 seconds later. Yeah. 1000 HP Zarya coming through, basically. This sounds so strong. I'm curious why Owl didn't find it so. I think they probably weren't playing with the appropriate initiators to surround it consistently enough. I think we did see some Zarya Reaper, and it worked reasonably well, but the team that was running Zarya Reaper that I remember in the playtest was at the halftime. They ran Zarya Reaper for a little bit, and they weren't. Neither of those teams were playing in a very organized manner. It'll be harder to protect a res, but surely you would create a comp where it would be more viable to res, right? Like you wouldn't try running Mercy Ball, for example. Maybe. You get some interesting questions there. Probably not, but like Mercy Ball is actually pretty good right now, so maybe you would. And you might run Mercy Ball because you're running Mercy Ball with a poke comp and you're expecting Mercy to res in a poke v poke type scenario in that situation. So maybe. Doom as a tank will have an extra defensive ability. He already has 3 cooldowns and a strong passive. I agree. he will get nerfed if they move him towards tanking. Well, they think it'll be a nerf. If he can punch multiple people, 100% he loses the one shot. I mean, he'd have to, yes. They don't generally like giving tanks one shot abilities. You can notice they don't really like giving tanks the ability to easily 100 to 0 someone in general. They've almost designed all of their tanks in such a way where it can do most of the damage it needs to, but it struggles to fit. Like, it's pretty good at doing most of someone's health, but it really struggles to get that finish. And that's why good tank players get really good at finding those extra little ways to do damage. Like, if you look at Winston and how much damage he does with Tesla, Winston's pretty low damage, and his clip tends to run out. Like, if the target receives any amount of healing, and he just tries to M1 someone to elimination, he's probably going to run out a little bit before he eliminates someone. Or he might go in there, go hard, try to eliminate someone, and he might get them low, but then his barrier breaks. Like, that's sort of how he's designed. And we could look at Hammond in a very similar way. Hammond might go, hey, I'm going to swing in, I'm going to pile drive, I'm going to hit you with the beginning of my clip because that's pretty good. I'm going to do about 150 damage to you between these three things. And then I've got the rest of my clip, maybe I've got 50 shots left, whatever, to try to do 50 damage, but like, this is an inaccurate weapon, and maybe you're not so great at using it, whatever, and like, you're kind of going to struggle to get that last 50 damage. So, like, again, good tank players figure out how to get around that, and they make sure they get the hit on the way in and the hit on the slam. They understand that they can use the roll through to finish, or they get good aim. But, like, this is consistent in sort of how they've designed most of the tanks. Again, Zarya can pretty easily melt someone to the point at which they lose 100 HP, lose 150 HP, that sort of thing, but understanding how to use her bubble to be a bully to stay in to get that last 50 HP, that last 75 HP for the elimination, that's, again, the harder thing. Like, they designed most of their tanks to be Roadhog's bit of an exception. Reinhardt doesn't struggle to finish people off either, but he struggles to get to them. That's mostly sort of what they looked at. They made it hard to get that last little bit, and that's a design intentional piece where they're going, and again, obviously as you get good enough, you solve all of those problems, but that's how they designed it for most of the ladders, most of the average players. And the point there is they're supposed to be, they set up eliminations, they hold people low health, they make people low health, and then it's, should be easy for a Genji to dash through, a Tracer to blink in, an Ashe to hit a shot, that sort of thing, even a body shot to help finish them off type thing. They open up elimination opportunities. That's the design. They struggle a little more to get them themselves. So again, yes, if Doomfist becomes a tank, I don't actually expect him to have an easy ability to one-shot someone, nor do I expect him to have a reliable combo without having to hit somewhat challenging skill shots in it. More challenging than what he currently has in his kit. Been scared of how strong the new Zarya will be. Feel like she's going to be awful. Could be. I think she'll be pretty reasonable, though. I think Mercy Res can literally never be used on your tank in 5v5. Baptiste is like the only one who can cover her well enough for that. Maybe a Mei wall. If Mei stays in the DPS category, maybe a Mei wall could protect her well enough, but I get what you're saying. And you can also always cheat. Okay, we're going to res during a beat. We're going to res during a transcendence. You're glad they're looking at Discord and Duplicate and various other tank buster abilities, though? Yeah, there's something to be said for that. Discord could be more frustrating, as could Nade. Hack at least has become less frustrating. They are looking at some of those things that perhaps make tank unfun. That said, some of the things that still make tank unfun will live on you, like Discord. You think it's guaranteed Tombfist gets bigger size? He's already bigger than Zarya? Okay. Discord probably 15% or so. Could be. Is that even enough? The problem you run into is if Discord's down to 15%, are we back in, okay, now supports really are too weak territory? Like here we're saying supports were too strong, maybe still are too strong. It's a little hard to know if they're talking about supports are too strong, even in their version where in-combat healing is reduced, and if that, or if they're talking about that's why they had to reduce in-combat healing, and that's still what they're thinking about, or if, there's just a misunderstanding and guys just eliminate teams back to front. Like, it's not that hard. tough to know there. If you make Zen's Discord down to 15%, you're then looking at weak heals. Yes, he does good damage, but like, can you justify running a Zen that isn't giving you that much more offensive power and is that vulnerable himself? Like, if your Discord orb is only doing 15%, can you justify running a Lucio or a Brig to try to protect your Zen? I don't think so. So I don't think that works. So got a little bit of a thing there. And it sounds like we're already struggling to justify these. It sounds like they're seeing a lot of double flex. And I know some coaches at the professional level are talking about double flex as well and how that might be the thing to run. I'm not convinced because I think you're going to find that if you don't have an off tank to run, it actually becomes more interesting to find ways to keep your backline safer for longer. Brig might be good enough about it. The way that they're changing her to give her a longer distance that she can go with shield back lets her hold flank route a little further from her other support to protect them a little bit better to make it harder for the other team to stage. Has some value. She might still have too much range issue though, and not enough peel unless they make her repair pack just heal a silly amount of HP very quickly. That's one possibility. Or Lucio may come back into style as a, hey, I'm just gonna keep my other support away from these guys. I'm gonna keep rotating them away type thing, and that's got value. That could make sense, especially if you're running a lot of divey stuff yourself and you're expecting to take their backline, because I think it's gonna be tough to defend against dives in this setup. You're not gonna be able to, for example, double barrier and go, hey, we have our Orisa group over here and our Sigma group over here, and you guys can't really stage around both either group appropriately. Well, now you can because there is no Sigma group or there is no Orisa group, and it becomes much harder to protect against that. So protecting your own backline and threatening their backline probably becomes the game. But we'll see. I could be wildly off there. Okay. 20% would still be oppressive. It's 25 now. Yeah, 20% would still be quite powerful, and it would probably still live on the tank. It may be that Discord just falls off faster, right? Maybe the solution is Discord doesn't last 3 seconds out of line of sight. It lasts 2 seconds out of line of sight, a second and a half out of line of sight. Maybe that's your answer. That's still not going to be super, super fun. Or maybe you give it some sort of cooldown if it can't be reapplied to the same target for 5 seconds after it falls off. Something like that. It's a little tough because then your Discord function starts differing significantly from your Harmony function, and you don't want Harmony to fundamentally change where it falls off faster, because how Zen works is, hey, I put my Harmony orb on a flanker, and if the flanker loses sight of me for a little bit, that's still okay. It still keeps doing its job. Discord gets nerfed by having one less teammate already, though. No, because one of the key ways to remove Discord, again, if we go back to goats, was like, oh shoot, my Reinhardt messed up and got discorded. It's okay, it'll get cleared by the next Zarya bubble cycle type thing. Yeah. 10% sounds pretty weak. I agree. One second, this nade only for Adam. Sure. Discord gets nerfed, sure, but it also gets buffed. Okay. You can't push in at all with it on you, Discord orb, when there's one tank? Yeah, that's true. Zen himself is better. I don't think Discord specifically is what makes him stronger, though. I want to see what else you have to say. Zen himself is better. I don't think Discord specifically is what makes him stronger, though. I mean, Discord has always been strong. His damage has always been strong. What do you think is better about Zen specifically? Can 100% see support would be the most impactful role. However, I think it's really weird of an idea they'd go for in combat healing to shortcut it. I don't think that's permanent. I think that was they sort of were going. I mean, they've said that that's not permanent. That's not their actual solution. They just want to be able to ratchet it up and down pretty easily while they're figuring out what sort of level they want it to be at, and then they'll adjust actual numbers to get there. And the actual solution shouldn't be a in combat healing nerf like that. It'll be okay. Well, we tune it maybe a tiny bit above where we want it to be in combat, or maybe we don't. Maybe we tune it to be at place X, place Y, whatever, and then accept that out of combat healing is going to be really slow because we tuned down healing, and that's okay. We wanted poke damage to be more permanent anyways. We wanted people to not just play their life, but play their health more than they currently are. I think that would be a little bit frustrating because it's still going to be enough of a team game that if you feel like, okay, we can't push because our Reinhardt fed too much of his life or something and it's going to take us forever to recover and we just have to wait and oh no, they're running us over. I don't think that's going to be fun gameplay, but we'll see. Like, I think that's going to lead to more of the, oh no, wait for 5 to push, wait for 5 to push, wait for full health to push, wait for full health to push. Oh, someone got eliminated while we were waiting because we couldn't heal them fast enough and they got antsy and went to did stuff. Like, I'm not sure that that's going to be a good feel, but we'll see. Maybe Moira will actually be useful now. Could be. I doubt it, though. Moira will be less useful. Okay. She'll get reworks. Massive AoE healing is a useless niche with only one tank. The problem is, what are her reworks going to look like? I mean, she probably will. I don't think we saw her played much in playtests, if at all. So, yeah, reworks, that would suggest that reworks are likely, or that the pros don't like playing her. The problem is, what do you do with her? Do you make the orb do different things? Do you further increase the power of the orb, decrease its cooldown, increase the amount of HP it has stored in it from a damage or healing perspective? It becomes a question. What if the Healbot Moira hero had less debuff to in-combat healing? Eh. Feel like Duplicate is handled by how slow Echo will get her ult comparatively when she is still being slow while in Duplicate? Yeah, that's true. That's true. They've confirmed the rework. She wasn't playable in the demo. Yeah, there we go. Would be in reference to Moira. Okay, the commented supports being more safe is a bit odd to me. Isn't the movement speed increase offsetting some of this safety? I'd agree. Now, it's not like huge as a move speed increase, but I would agree that it probably not. Okay. Like, yes, there's one less tank diving, but surely Tracer and Genji are now enjoying diving more because they can get in position to dive faster. Yeah, that's what should be happening. Now, you have okay, well, your dive's not going to be successful. In the current world, your dive isn't successful because there's a Brig, but Brig is being changed and potentially changed in a way that makes her a less good protector. Okay. So what's your next best protection? Well, traditionally, when you've designed Overwatch teams, some of the mainstays for most of the history of Overwatch, even if this isn't true now, would be you have a main tank, you have a diva, you have a DPS, you have another DPS, you have a Lucio, and you have a flex support. And these were sort of mainstays for quite a while because these were sort of your defensive positions. Like, these were sort of your defensive positions of, like, they're the safeties, they're doing these things, they're the lines that are sort of, this diva is protecting your main tank and helping a little bit protect your backline. This Lucio is protecting your backline and helping rotate maybe your core a little bit, or helping rotate your front line a little bit. Like, these were the utility safety places. The diva is slowing down how fast the enemy can solve fights by, no, you have to get my DM out, you have to figure out where I am, you have to do these things before you can activate your ult. Lucio, similar boat. No, you can't use that Blizzard. It's going to be worthless. I'm still here and I still have speed amp. You're going to have to get amp out of me before you're able to do these sorts of things. Like, these have been things that have made sense, and going, no, this doesn't exist. And then also seeing people go, no, double flex support makes me go, I don't know. This might become even more important. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it's just not strong enough. It just can't do enough by itself, this role, and therefore it's going to be a case of, no, we are going to just make this a who can blow up the other team first. Double flex support, main tank, go. Or, maybe the main tanks are going to lead hard towards the off tank role and a peel role, but again, then we're into corner holding simulator. The ult charge rate in Overwatch 2 looks painfully slow, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if they globally buffed it a bit. Well, again, but if your rate is slow because you're shooting at tanks too often, you should probably be trying to eliminate teams back to front. Like, the game is being designed in such a way that you should go after supports again, guys. Like, that's what it looks like to me, and I think we're seeing some greed on this double flex support thing, some of it, because, oh, hey, people are trying to do this, and it's like, no, I'm just gonna go like this. I'm just gonna do this. I don't care. I'm ignoring you. I'm ignoring you. I'm either gonna rotate pass and dive, or I'm going to take angles, maybe have people set up, wide angles where your shield isn't relevant, and I can get on your supports. But we will see. We will see. Uh-huh. But that probably is a healthier design philosophy and space for the game. Supports will complain if they're getting eliminated first, targeted first on the regular. Don't get me wrong. We already saw that happen. Um, Here a lot, but in general a lot, in some of the early dive iterations of the game, and that's a thing. But I think that's probably okay because we've also seen what queue times do. Of there are more people willing to play support than tank. Like there are, and if that's the case, you actually don't want tank to be the role that is just totally crushed and unfun and this and that and the other thing. Now, I still think tank is fine, especially right now. I think the game's in a great balance state right now. But if that's what they're thinking about the psychology of how many people want to play what role, perhaps making support a little less fun makes sense. Now, ideally, you want every role to be fun, but someone is going to be the person that gets, the damage, the things, the pressure thrown their way. So we'll see. Maybe that's the thought. Maybe they're playing some 3D chess there. Definitely not 70. Mm-hmm. And again, if you're eliminating the backline first, but you'll get more ult charge off of them, not because they have more health, but because they don't give reduced ult charge. Do they not understand the game, or do they not understand many people don't play the game perfectly? Or do they understand many people don't play the game perfectly? Fair point, fair point. BlizzDevs finally remembered the Reddit passwords. I think they're making an effort to be both here and here, but mostly here, more active, more transparent, that sort of thing. I'm not, as I said in the other thing where we covered, they're getting more active on their forums. We did a video on that. I'm not convinced that that's great. I think it's really hard to not just like be preening constantly. And I don't mean them, I mean posters. If you have an official forum and the devs are active on it, it's hard to not constantly be pitching them, lobbying them, preening for them, and then other people out of concern that that's going to work, battling you and also trying to lobby and do their thing because, like, no, the game's in a good spot. Don't do that. Don't super buff supports or don't super buff tanks or don't super nerf DPS or whatever. Like, and it sort of becomes that and gets too much focus for that. Something like this, I'm not a huge fan of Reddit's upvote downvote system. I actually think there are lots of problems with how Reddit works. But one of the benefits of, even if they drop by this sort of place from time to time, you hit a place of they're less likely to be lobbied directly. They might be lobbied directly when they make a post like this, but you're not going to have like, oh, look, 3/4 of the posts are basically people trying to lobby for or against buffs, nerfs, or for this feature that actually doesn't help, or that sort of thing. Like, it's hard not to have this sort of place be good unless your mods are just like, we're going to remove all that sort of stuff. But you don't actually want all of that sort of stuff removed because some of those balance discussions are good and useful in how you advance the game. So it's like really tough to do, and I think you're just better off with this sort of thing. That said, Blizzard has had forums since things like Reddit didn't exist, so they're kind of stuck continuing to have them. And it's not a good look to have abandoned forums and a wasteland of forums, so I think they're kind of stuck in a no-win situation there. I know some of my viewers come from the Blizzard forums, and I appreciate you guys. I appreciate that you post here, that you try to do your stuff. I appreciate that you're here watching stuff, making comments. I can't respond to every comment, but I don't think it's like a bad idea to post in the Blizzard forums or anything. I just don't know that I think it's going to be a good return on investment for the man hours that they're spending in here compared to, well, not spending them anywhere really. Sure, engaging with the community sometimes, but I'm not sure engaging with the community through forums on the regular is that much of a benefit to them, to be perfectly honest. Yes, there should be some, but On the flip side, when they do, we get to see things like this where it's like, hey, we're using barriers to protect against snipers. Not really. Where we just sort of see that they don't really understand their game. Which maybe, like, oh, Temporal, what are you talking about? We definitely want to know those things so that we can, tell them that. But then they're not going to like that and they're just going to retreat further in. Yes, I'm the one telling them they don't understand their game, but I'm not posting this all over their forums. Okay, we'll continue. Zenana being strong in playtesting is not really bad news for them. Sure. One less tank diving makes Zen Brig, even Bashless, seem unstoppable, especially because the lower healing doesn't matter as much. I mean, it just becomes a base race thing. Like, if you're Zen Brig and the other team has a ball back here, a tracer over here, and an echo coming at you from over here, I mean, you're going to get eliminated. Like, unless Brig now packs do super amounts of healing or her bash hit box is super generous, you're going to get eliminated by this. Ball doesn't slow down ball doesn't stop the pile drive anymore. It's over. Like, this is over. The pile drive doesn't get stopped. The tracer might take damage but can immediately recall out of it or blink away. This sort of thing. Like, no. And the reason is, again, what currently your solution is, hey, like, I don't need D.Va. Like, this comp, you could play this comp as a mirror right now. So this could be Ball, Echo, Tracer, Zen Brig on both teams. And, like, your Zen Brig are going to get blown up. And that's fine. That's okay. That just goes back to the 9 months, year and a half, whatever we had of dive that was, hey, and it was an evolving dive. It was a changing composition, but like it was for some of that time base race who can eliminate the other team's supports first, stage your dive appropriately. And yes, you correctly understand that if you're good at the game, you go, hey, we're not going to let you stage properly. Our Echo's going to put pressure on your Tracer. Our Tracer's going to put pressure on your Ball. So you can't establish lanes, so you can't get a good surround to dive. Like, that's a thing that happens as teams get good, but like ultimately when one team does pull the trigger and dive, the other team is either going to pull the trigger and hard peel, which you're probably not going to do if you don't have a D.Va on your team or something like that, or Zarya, because how can you possibly make that work at that point? You just can't reasonably peel the damage, or you try to trade out the other team's backline. But they were able to stage better, so they're probably going to get yours first. Again, if your Zen player is better, your Brig player is better, maybe they won't. But that sort of becomes the, okay, front lines versus back lines type thing. Front lines versus front lines to start, and then once the trigger gets pulled, you would go into a front lines versus back lines thing. And I just don't see how Brig is going to make this protection here without having a Sigma to help, a D.Va to help, something to help here, unless a Zarya to help. Something to help here, unless you've made your strategy from the get-go that we're going to peel and, okay, we don't have Zen Brig. We have Zen Brig, Zarya, plus McCree, plus Reaper. Okay, now I understand how you're going to peel it. But now they're going to fight you differently. They're going to enable their Echo to do work. Maybe they'll give their Echo a mercy pocket, that sort of thing. More worried about Zarya Moira. Okay. It's a really good one. The one discusses Brig a lot. Sure. Expect D.Va to be pretty good, but in the pro play test, she blows up really fast. Some people drove her wrong. And with the ult charge being lower, she doesn't get second life as often to offset it. I suspect that they'll fix that. Her being out of mech too long is something that you can adjust. You can adjust specifically the charge on second life to make it come faster and faster, because it's pretty important. Like, it's too big of a nerf to go from 1 tank to 0 tanks is a bigger deal than going from 2 tanks to 1 tank. You can hide with 1 tank for a bit and get back up to 2, and that's pretty good. This is a number that you just hope they adjust so that she doesn't get caught without mech for very long, like at all, even if she doesn't use self-destruct. Grunt says, my assumption is that the 25% combat debuff came in due to what Jeff is saying about healing being way too strong. Right. DPS moving faster is my concerning thing. We just nerfed anti-dive Brig, so what if dive becomes far more common? I feel like I've talked about the dive versus backline matchup a lot, so I'm going to move on. Boo nerd stuff. Thank you, Adam. Thank you. Crunch says, I feel like due to the lack of the second tank, you're lacking that frontline v frontline damage. Like Zarya and Ryan aren't able to off angle from each other to run over their Ryan. But your Mei can do it, your Reaper can do it, your Kree can do it, your Hanzo can do it. I'm not sure that's an issue. Logic and facts won't help you when I get a hold of you in 1v1 game, bro. Right, but 1v1 isn't the pinnacle or the focus of Overwatch. Here's logic and facts. 2-tap the head. Ana 2-tapping the head doesn't do anything. Brig Bash goes through her barriers again, but it's not like you can actually play her in the tank line anymore. Maybe. We don't know what her number changes are going to look like. Like, let's be honest. They might give her more health. They might increase the strength of Inspire. Like, it's tough to know exactly, because if she's your only peel in the back line, for her to be a reasonable Lucio competitor, a reasonable Mercy competitor, a reasonable competitor not just with those two, but with, we can think of this as a new game if we want, a reasonable competitor with all of the supports, she's going to need something more than just that shield bash rework. She's either going to need a very powerful repair pack for her partner support, or an equivalent of a very powerful repair pack by, hey, repair pack plus Inspire is going, and we've strengthened Inspire. Or a lot of damage, but I don't think a lot of damage really saves her. Or, more bulk to herself, that sort of thing. And if she has more Inspire, she does have more bulk. Brig doesn't beat flankers. What's the point of Brig? She'll have to. She'll have to do a decent job of warding off flankers, and if she doesn't, you're not going to play her. It's that simple. Or they make her so bulky that you want to play her in the front line. She can do 155 burst with the higher bash damage. She'll be fine versus flankers, but Tracer's going to recall out of it, and Genji's going to pop deflect after you bash him, because then you can't hurt him with melee hits. So I don't know about that. Because again, they're not stunned. Right. And again, Sombra's going to translocate out if she gets caught by the big bash damage. Like, you're not going to get your follow-up hits from, say, Whip Shot to finish people off. Armor pack support and do higher damage than live. Brig will get more changes for sure, though. Yeah, I mean, there's ways to make Brig work. Don't get me wrong. I think people are probably wrong in their, let's abandon flex support. I think keeping your flex supports away from the other team for longer. And I think eliminating teams back to front and playing to keep your team alive for longer is probably a good solution right now, which means, hey, you actually put even more pressure on your main support player. But I don't know if, does Mercy continue to be in that list? Maybe. I think it's going to be hard for Mercy to keep another support up. It's already hard for Mercy to keep another support up, and that's why you see Mercy is kind of like she's not necessarily the least used main support. That's not quite fair in organized play, but because we shift between metas. But what we've had in terms of metas for the while is, well, okay, either you're running Lucio with BAP or Moira for a Brawl or a 6-man comp, or you're running Zen or Ana with Brig, and then there's some really greedy situations where instead of Brig, you can run Mercy. But you're kind of getting greedy. You kind of need someone to enable. If the other team makes comp swaps, you have to do it. It's the greedy swap. So that might have some things, and I think we continue to see that. And the reason that this is the greedy swap is because Zen pocketing, or Mercy helping Zen, or Mercy helping Ana, neither of these is really enough to actually keep your Zen alive against a coordinated dive. It might help your Zen beat a Tracer, great. Won't help the Zen beat the Tracer if the Tracer gets the jump, but that shouldn't really happen. Doesn't really help your Ana. Might help your Zen. Not going to help your Zen against a coordinated dive the way that a Brig can actually shut down multiple of the divers long enough for other people to come help. That sort of thing. So, we have a little bit of a thing there of, okay, and if you're going full poke, well, you don't need the Mercy. Let's run Zen plus BAP, that sort of thing. So, we'll see. We'll see. That said, Zen Mercy is still a tier 1 combination. It's just pretty niche, I'd say. My point is she gets used less. So, if you're putting even more defensive concern on your main support because Diva doesn't exist or exists but is going to be used differently, Zarya exists but is going to be used differently. Zarya was never used that heavily on the back line, not in good play anyways. You do run into a situation of, okay, you have to lean a little less on the offense and a little more on the peel, and Mercy's more in the offensive category, a little less in the peel category for that one. Again, her peel's very good, 55 health per second, damage boost, don't get me wrong, but peeling for like your backline, little less good. Extra health just isn't enough to keep you alive against coordinated dives. That's what CC your stupid stats are for. None can win versus Sombra. Stun was never. Well, oh, hold on. Hold on. Okay. Okay, you guys put a lot in here. I'm trying to catch up. Sorry. Stun was never the scariest cooldown versus dive. It was whip shot. She needs both. Like her ability to go, I'm gonna whip shot the Winston now as he jumps in and stun the diva as she boosters in was, okay, I've defanged 2 fangs of your 4 fanged or 3 fanged dive. Like, or I can put them both into eliminating someone. Like a actual flanker, not a dive tank. But like she really does need both of those abilities, or she has leaned heavily on having both of those abilities, I'd say. Okay. I think it's all right for Bash not to counter Reaper's ult, though. It's a weak enough ult as is. Um, Part of what makes it weak is how much it gets shut down by CC or by effects like Defense Matrix. So I think if you have less of both of those in the game, because there's only one tank on the board and there's a lot less CC in the game, that makes it a bit better of an ult. Was Brig ever the main thing you picked to counter Reaper ult? No, of course not. But you also can't flashbang it, it sounds like. Just saying. Yes, you could still hook it to cancel it, but that means you have to run Roadhog. You can DM it to counter it, but your Diva's doing a lot of things now. Mobility is easily going to be insanely important. That's why I thought the pros would make Diva work. But on the other hand, they may even mean the off tanks are not Diva, and that may mean that off tanks that are not Diva get eliminated even quicker than that. Could be, could be. Strength question about the strength of Reaper's ult with reduced CC. Sure, sure. Why does it feel like they only recently started 5v5 PvP balance? Probably because that's true. And again, I'm supportive of the Owl ownership and their move to effectively go, we're not playing. We're not doing another season of Owl on Overwatch 1 because it looks like very little PvP work had happened on Overwatch 2. And while now it might be rushed and it might be like, oh, it's not going to be done in time, it's not going to be good enough for the new season of Owl. Clearly, there's been enough time to have this in better shape. It just hasn't been done. So like clearly the pedal needed to be put it to the metal. There needed to be some pressure here. So I'm supportive. Reaper ults the backline. It's kind of backline's fault. Okay. He's very loud. Sure, sure. 5 seconds of bubble on someone is very scary. What are your thoughts about Brawl being ran in Overwatch 2? Probably still doable. I mean, we did see Shock. Again, it's always going to depend on the balance patch you're on. I don't think it's going to fundamentally be an unviable, impossible way to play the game. It might be too weak because mobility might be too good. On the other hand, Shock did a pretty good job with their Brawl hold. They took 2+ minutes off the map with their spawn camp on Brawl, and okay, it looks like there's something there. It might not be the flavor, it might not be the best way to play the game, but there's clearly something to it in some situations. I kind of like it conceptually. Sorry, I can tell someone else to become the tank. Right, right. Mm-hmm. I've been thinking Orisa. I know they want to rework her due to being quite static, but I don't think Sigma is being reworked. But do you think Sigma is being reworked to actually being too powerful? Due to actually being too powerful? Could be. Could be that what's going on. I think Real's probably had the right of it in our conversation. If they're terrified of bunker, they don't want this long range standstill, do damage type hero with barriers to exist, and they don't know how to design their way out of it. And I get it. I do get it. Like, they have had two things that the community has absolutely hated, perhaps with reason, and those were goats and double barrier. And that's those are probably things that are etched in stone that they have to avoid at this point. Uh, don't really have to avoid goats anymore because it literally can't happen. And people don't mind brawl metas; they just minded goats, so that's okay. So now the thing that they have to watch out for is double barrier. And okay, well you can't have double barrier because now you can only have one tank. But are you going to have a situation where hey, they're still not fun? Like you don't want to have Bastion bunkers exist when you already eliminated Bastion. Like Bastion created much the same issue that double barrier created. If it's just too hard to unroot this team to do this. Like the dive that's necessary to break this team requires coordination levels that are just not going to happen on ladder, that sort of thing. And you don't want that to occur. So there's probably concern there. I don't really think Sigma can do that by himself, but that must be what they're worried about. They realize they have to make him stronger to sort of tank, and if they make him stronger to sort of tank, can that happen? How do they do it? We'll see. Zarya needs higher right click jumps for more vertical mobility. Just double rocket jump with her. You can do it. Sigma is confirmed reworked. Yep. Oh, you're saying why? Because in your mind he was the closest into fitting into Overwatch 2. Tell us more about that, Crunch. Why do you think he was the closest into fitting to Overwatch 2? That's what I'm saying. I think that with them wanting to buff poke tanks and Sigma, he is right now might be reworking him into being a no. They might be reworking him to bring him down. Okay. Discord seems too rewarding for a no skill ability. I mean, the orb might feel like it's light on skill, though I'm not totally sure I'd agree with that. But the penalty for having Discord orb is Zen has no defensive abilities, no mobility, and his self heal is just shield regeneration. You know, he doesn't have a self nade. He doesn't have Guardian Angel. He doesn't have a lamp, a regenerative burst. He doesn't have skates to ride away on the walls or amp to heal himself. Like that's the his skill becomes much more and okay, are you dealing with the flankers before they get to you? You have to use that Discord orb to not let them in, that sort of thing. Do you think Rally sucks now that it's no longer armor? We'll see. I'm gonna want to see more on that. I need to know more about how she's gonna work. Faster drop off rate, right? So many new knobs to turn to think of. Sure, sure. Rally must suck now that's not armor. I believe Rally is still armor. It's just essentially healing you a little more if it's being used when a fight is just starting. If you used it pre-fight, I suppose there's a small advantage, but it seems like they've nerfed Rally. I mean, Rally was one of the best ults in the game, so that wouldn't be the end of the world. On the other hand, she kind of needed that in her kit. Okay, Anna with weak heals seems kind of useless when Sleep and Nade are on CD. Well, okay, but why didn't you get value out of that Sleep and Nade that are on CD? You're not trying to throw a nade and a sleep into Ryan Diva anymore. Only one, or someone else who's even easier to get them off against. I suppose Orisa is not necessarily easier to get sleep off against, but her team isn't terribly hard to get it off against. Uh-huh, we didn't see Moira at all. Right, she wasn't there. Mm-hmm. If Echo's ult still stops you from swapping heroes in Overwatch 2, I'm gonna write a strong worded letter to Aaron. Okay, okay. Your 99% rally is the green health bar now. Yeah, I could see that. Okay. Catching up on chat here. You guys are fighting over Moth meta. Moth meta was Mercy specifically, but yeah, Mercy Zen mostly got run. They mentioned that they didn't do the Q&A in the forums because they didn't feel the forums are good enough yet for it. I'm glad they recognize that. I think you combat that with better moderation. So I get what you're saying. I think the forums foster less groupthink than Reddit. I think that's true, and I think that's one of the benefits. I do not necessarily like the upvote downvote system that Reddit has. I don't like how it works. I don't like that it tends to reward early funny posts. I don't like that it tends to suppress anything that goes against the groupthink. I don't like how Reddit works in general. Like nice, long, interesting analytical pieces. This would be my own bias put up by a coach, not necessarily me, but by other things that I want to read do not get upvotes. Whereas, oh look, here's the 10 billionth time that we're putting up a meme about, breadsticks. Okay, great guys, that was real helpful. Like, I don't necessarily like what Reddit does, so I'm not like, and I think you are one of the four. I think you are a Blizzard forum user here, Zergling Dance, and again, I don't think there's a perfect solution to this. This is not me going, oh, yay, Reddit is wonderful. I definitely don't think that. I just think that they probably are right, that this isn't that there's some real issues with it, and there is too much preening, too much lobbying to the devs that happen, and then battling over the lobbying, that sort of thing. Which is better? You think the forums foster less groupthink than Reddit, which is better? I agree. That is an aspect of them that is better. With an AMA, you can say you got 1 hour, then we're gone. Forms have the same mob mentality, in my opinion. I think there's some of that, especially now that posts get hidden. Now that we're in an era where posts get likes and reports or whatever, and then they get stuff where it's like, oh, hidden or whatever. I think they're kind of turning into Reddit. And just ignore the ignoring questions. I hear you. I hear you. We get one every few months. It's fine, temporal. Okay. Confirmed rally is green health, at least currently. Okay. Oh, that's a visual bug? Okay, then I don't know anymore. Trading backlines is rarely ever a neutral trade, though. Why? Because it happens at different speeds? It's supposed to. That's a result of your staging. Like, which backline goes down first is a question of how did the front lines do staging against each other, not letting each other in, getting into good positions to dive the other team, and then how well of a job do the backlines do defending themselves. The better they defend themselves, the longer they'll last. The better their front line did, either the longer their backline will last, or the faster the opposing backline will get eliminated. I'm, of course, assuming roughly mirror comps in that situation. Because you're not worried about your backline getting traded. If, for example, the opposing team is, it's different. If the opposing team is running Brawl, for example, their backline is going to be on top of their front line in a lot of situations and not really going to get eliminated, other than someone who off angles, who your front line as a dive team is going to go deal with. They'll go deal with the off angled person if they off angle too hard because they can isolate them, that sort of thing. If you're dealing with like dive vs dive, well, you should have similar types of similar types of backlines and front lines. Okay. Parody says engaging with the forums is essentially the same thing as sending out PR. All the PR. All the YouTubers and many of the streamers are going to cover it, so it's not all that wasteful, really. I think I'm being called out for covering the forums. Fair enough, fair enough. But you get the same thing on Reddit. And you can do the same thing by releasing a video, by releasing a tweet, by doing a blog post, by leaking stuff out to the game journalist reporting sites that will then go look at. I mean, you can do it other ways if you want. Circling Dance says, I'm not sold on the whole 5v5 change in terms of having more individual impact. I think we have enough in 6v6. I kind of think people who think they don't have enough just aren't seeing where they are making mistakes or where they can have impact. I know. I know. I think 5v5 throwers, Smurf, levers, etc. are going to be so much more frustrating. Yep. Yep. But if you can avoid the Smurf and lever problem somehow, you may get into a situation where you do have more ability to come back into a fight where you went down two. Maybe. Maybe. If you're that much better than the lobby. Of course, even now, if you're that much better than the lobby, you can do it on most heroes. Just aren't seeing where is probably where they're going with that, though. What if Repair Pack converted health to armor, so not overhealing like it used to, but healing up to full, then converting the top of the health to armor pool? Could work. It would be a pretty big buff, but it could work. Think they're making a mistake with changing the game so much? Right, but they've loaded the deck to work. They've loaded the deck to work by going, hey, we're making changes. We're making changes, and those things are what am I trying? They're making these changes, and those things are going to call media attention, call marketing to them, and potentially get players to come back to try it, that sort of thing. Now, if they just released Overwatch 2 and they release it with enough heroes, that probably would have happened anyways, but this stacks more attention on them for it to try to hit the ball out of the park. We'll see. We'll see. But I would agree, Zergling Dance, that the game, as I've said, for the last year has been in a really good state balance wise. Like, yes, we've had things that are over or under tuned, but we've had very fun metas, in my opinion, for the last year or so. I don't think we need to. I think, yeah, it would be cool to have new heroes, and yes, those will always change the meta, but unfortunate that they pulled the plug as early as they did. Please, no more Armor Tracer. 150 Armor Tracer crying. Yeah, yeah. Okay, plenty of room for mistakes in designing games like this, but 5v5 has a fair few benefits that come with it. Some, those, everything is a double-edged sword. Okay, we have Marcelo saying, Hi Temporal, how are you? Can you check this post on Overwatch University later? It's called How Are You Supposed to Climb as a Healer Solo Queue? Masters player just bought a new account, plays Silver on Healer. Well, I mean, I don't know how to climb on Healer. On Support, I can teach people how to climb on Support. That's a thing. I mean, I'll pull it up real quick as I desperately try to catch up on this chat. I'll probably, if it's worth it, I might go into another video on it, but okay, 14 hours old. That's not the one I opened. Game hates me. Game hates me. That's not right. Browser hates me, apparently. Okay, that's going to take for... Okay. Mm-hmm. And? So, Masters player... Master Zyman consistently all three roles. Sure. Sure. Player support's the same way. Player supports to win fights faster. So if you can mechanically play at a master's level, you should be locking Zen, Anna, Bap, and playing to just go, hey, I'm just not going to play silver games. I don't care. I'm not going to give my team time to mess up. Anytime we're close to a 6v5 or a 5v6, I'm going to start fighting. I'm going to not fight stupidly, but I'm going to start fighting, and I'm going to go ahead and frag them out. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the video that we're currently in the middle of. But that's the short answer. Like, if you can play at a master's level mechanically, you can mechanically just lock in some of the more damage oriented supports, and rather than try to learn how the game functions in silver, the pace of silver, what your teammates are going to do, just solve fights faster than your team is able to lose them. Okay. Overwatch 1 has back to front and front to back at different times. Why wouldn't we assume Overwatch 2 to be both at different times? I think we would in Artstorm. I absolutely think that we would assume it to be both at different times. But based on what we're currently seeing, I'm looking at some of this and saying, if we're seeing tanks feed less ult charge, and we're also seeing there's less tools to protect your backline, at least for now, until we see more things that protect the backline. Like, based on the changes we're seeing, and that doesn't mean that new heroes won't change it. That doesn't mean that, balance changes, reworks to some of the heroes won't change it. But the things that we're seeing right now would lead towards a meta. Like, that's all I can really do, right? Look at it and go, okay, well, what meta is this initially going to lead us towards? Things could eventually change that, but I look at some of this stuff and go, back to front looks like the preferred way to play the game. If we're going to do less ult charge from the front line, there's only going to have one tank on the board, people are looking towards double flex support, your DPS start moving faster, that sort of thing. Like, okay, the devs are telling us that healing tanks is kind of too easy, that sort of thing, and okay, they'll nerf that, but like, if they're telling us all these things, that's how I'd look at playing the game. But over time, that'll probably change, and it's possible that reworked heroes, like, it's possible that we'll have a new support release that just makes eliminating supports incredibly challenging. Like, the support drops like a StarCraft-style marine bunker that both of them hop in, and they're like, aha, yes, we are protected now because we have our bunker that has we have our bunker that has windows, and we can shoot out of these windows, and they're great, and you can't shoot us, and you have to destroy our bunker first. Okay, well, yeah, then we're not going to go eliminating supports first. We're going to work on the front line. um, I, I I expect that over time we would probably see changes, but the culmination of the changes that we have right now, without having seen new heroes, without having seen the results of some of the reworks, would suggest that that becomes an attractive way to look at the game. LARC says, I expect 5v5 to be better eventually, the problem being how long it might take to get there. If it's not good off the bat, it's not going to matter. Like, it'll matter in the fact that, hey, it's replacing the game that we enjoy, that we play, that is a lot of fun, and so we care, because since it's replacing the game, we have to play it, or we don't have to play it, we can go play other games, but, like, can't keep playing this game, so you do want it to get good if it's not good on release. But from a success standpoint, it has to be good off the gate. It has to be released on a good balance patch. Like, the release has to land on a good balance patch, or they have to immediately get to a good balance patch, like the good balance patch we're on right now. But you can't use this one because, obviously, I mean, you could use this one, but the problem you run into is once you add new heroes, you're not on this one anymore. Temporal desperately trying to catch up with chat. I know, Crunch. I know. It's hard. The issue with 5v5 will be the initial bad press. I don't think there's a way around the initial chaotic launch. No, if it's fun, it doesn't matter. There won't be much bad press if it's fun. Like, if people are like instantly hopping in and having fun, it'll get good press, or even if it gets bad press because the PR world is still stuck in no lawsuits around Blizzard, the community that the community that fans actually engage in, which is, hey, the YouTube communities, the Discord communities, the subreddits, those things will love it, and it won't matter what Kotaku or Verge or whatever writes about it, that sort of thing. Kanga says, yeah, I felt like they've spent a lot of years on PvE, and now Activision forced them to feature lock, so they're frantically trying to fix PvP. I hope so. I hope they spent a lot of time on PvE and it's really good, because that would be huge for them. If they can make people come play Overwatch 2 really enjoy the PvE as a game tourist, and then move on and play another game, if they still have good, warm, fuzzy feelings around Overwatch 2, they'll be much more willing to watch Owl, even if they didn't do a ton of competitive stuff themselves. They'll be much more willing to watch their collegiate Overwatch team. They'll be much more willing to go, hey, this is a big gaming event that happens. They're a gamer. Yeah, they liked Overwatch 2. They played through that just like they played through the StarCraft campaign, and they enjoyed that. And so they'll watch a game of StarCraft, that sort of thing, versus no, I'm not going to go watch Owl because my experience with Overwatch was PvP, and when I left Overwatch, I didn't leave it with good warm fuzzies after having completed the campaign, the single player mode, after getting a little bit bored of dailies, but not like hating them, but instead the game was just terrible. I just got dove by Winstons all the time and it wasn't any fun. The game was terrible. I could never play DPS. It was just tanks smacking into each other all of the time. The game was terrible. I played Reinhardt and I just could not move my character without getting discorded, purpled, hacked, frozen, uppercut, moved around by a ball every game. Like, when people leave with those feelings, they're much less likely to become viewers, consumers, etc. of this product that Blizzard wants to be successful. So from their standpoint, this having a good PvE scene would be good. It would also be good from a press standpoint, from having more players play the game. If more players play the game, perhaps you convert them over to trying PvP when they, generally haven't been PvP players. Like, you can bring in a new player base that really aren't PvP players, which Overwatch did, by the way. It brought in a lot of traditionally not PvP players to get them to try it because of its design, because of things like that. But how much of that new audience is left to come try it that traditionally have not been competitive players that might make the branch over if they come into Overwatch 2 because it has PvE, and then are like, okay, well, now I'll give PvP a try that didn't previously. Okay. Let's jump around now. Feel like they've spent a ton of time, years on PvE, and now Activision forced them to... Oh, that was the feature lock. Sorry, we just talked about that. Does Brig need to lean less on having both if there's one less tank diving? Probably still needs them because three-person dives are still pretty darn dangerous. Like, taking a four-person dive to a two-person dive is a pretty big deal for Brig, especially when she's still going to repair pack her other support. Taking a three-person dive to a two-person dive, not as big a change, especially because, your team still has to be getting value. We'll see. Like, if we only have one tank, does it feel like you're completely unable to dive because she gets whip shot, then bash, and just cycles you out? Could be. Could be. I don't think so because, like, look at it like this. Can a Tracer plus Sombra farm a Zen? Every time. Can a Tracer plus Sombra farm a Zen that has a repair pack on them? Every time. Okay. Huh. That's still a little bit of a problem. Like, okay, my Brig knocked out the Winston, doesn't let him in, but now doesn't have anything that they can really do besides a repair pack to stop the Sombra Tracer. Not really. And you might be like, okay, well, just use the whip shot on the Winston and then go bash at the Tracer, not to eliminate her, but to force her to recall. Yeah, that helps a little. That's a little bit better. I don't think it's enough, but I think there's plenty of ways to adjust Brig to make her viable. So I'm actually not too worried about her if they understand what they need to do. And there's multiple directions you can do. You can put her back in the front line. You can increase the amount her Inspire heals. You can increase the amount her Repair Pack heals / let it work in combat when some of this other stuff isn't. I know that's a temporary thing. You can, just give her more health, give her shield more health. I don't like some of these things because it's like the return of Monstrosity Brig, but if she's not stunning, I'm less worried about the return of the Monstrosity Brig. So there's, I think, some things you can do that make her viable and make her either reasonably good at healing or worth putting in her front line, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm not too worried about her. She could be bad. She could be bad. Lucio might just be strictly better, or some new support hero might just be strictly better. Okay, Zergling Dance says it's going to be so depressing, going from a game with pretty decent stable balance to the mess Overwatch 2 will be at launch, but no one will understand it, so it'll be new and fresh, and, there'll be something enjoyable to that as well. Hopefully the reward will be worthwhile. Exactly. Stable balance is only here because no new heroes were released in ages due to Overwatch 2 development. Different people like different things, unfortunately. Some people like a stable game where the meta can evolve naturally from people understanding it better and adjusting. Some people like, change it. It's been 2 minutes. I want a new patch. Make different heroes powerful. They did start balancing faster, which helped. Yeah. For a period, it was only once every 2 months. It was longer than that for a while. If Overwatch 2 never got developed, the game would be. If Overwatch 2 never got developed, the game would be in a much worse balance state. Maybe 2, I think. Yeah, it really was 2. Yeah, I love the balance right now without new heroes and maps. Yep. Hey, Danana. I think they need to be prepared to bounce much faster after they drop a hero. The problem is sometimes they do that and like it takes the scene a while to figure out how powerful a hero is. It took the scene a while to figure out how powerful Bap was. It took the scene a little bit to figure out how powerful Hammond was. Part of that is because Hammond was suppressed by goats because he really wasn't terribly good into goats. You didn't put him into goats, and it didn't make sense. You tried to play him against goats, but he still wasn't powerful enough because goats was more powerful. Like they release heroes frequently powerful. Echo took a little bit before people really got quite how good she was. I still think people might be underselling her a little bit. She should probably occupy her spot a little more solidly than she does. She gets rotated out pretty frequently, but neither here nor there. Like it takes people a while to figure this stuff out to get good enough at a new hero. So it makes it hard to be like, oh, we need to nerf them, we need to drop them, they're doing too well, or oh no, they're too weak, we need to buff them. Like without making it very yo-yo-y. And I think that's the bigger problem. I think the bigger problem is that they're very hesitant to do direct reverts of nerfs or buffs. I think that would actually be better, but ego won't let most people do that. Okay. What does that look like? Assume they have a dedicated team for balancing heroes. My reason for him fitting to Overwatch 2 was that he was a pretty flexible shield. Damage is already quite strong, honestly. Rock helps try to deal partially with him being rushed down. Sure. And then Grass is a decent tool to deal with big chunk of incoming damage. It's that flexibility he has and the power that he can project that makes me think he was pretty close to getting into Overwatch 2 as a solo tank. Okay. I mean, that flexibility is also what D.Va has. So, maybe she'll do it. There's a reason those two have been the direct competitors. We'll eventually get to, this is quote apparently from them, we'll eventually get to the point where we can host a Q&A here in the forums. I still need to spend some more time on boards working with all of you. Oh. To create an environment that would lead to a productive season for all involved. That's kind of the thing. Yeah, that was Andy B's reason why they didn't go to their own forums, which is comical. Yeah, no, I mean it is comical. I don't know how successful you can be here. Maybe better moderation, but what does that look like? Because it gets really arbitrary to have better moderation of like, no, stop trying to appeal directly to the devs. Okay, I won't appeal directly to the devs. I'm just going to flood the forums with buff Winston or nerf Anna threads every 3 days, every 2 days. Or, okay, let me find a bunch of different ways to cutely say nerf Anna that, like I'm actually covering different topics, but really the heart of all of them is nerf Anna, if that's what you're trying to get across. Like, okay, like it's just going to be really tough to moderate that sort of thing in a way that isn't arbitrary, that is fair, because, like, oh, wait, this is a place where we think we can access the developers that they're paying attention to. Breadstick memes are temporary, temporal is eternal. Thank you, Congex. Uh-huh. You miss hearing Jeff's voice in developer updates? Okay. No, trading backlines favors the spawn advantage, defenders, etc. Exception being neutral points on Koth. With this much chat, we need more likes. Come on, boys. Oh, yeah, let's get some more likes in here, guys. Let's get some more likes. Cool. And sounds identical to Jeff, though. 2 Reddits in 1. Let's go, boys. Okay. Place 2 alt accounts and support. 1-5 out of 5, place 2800. Second 1-4 out of 5, place 2700. Performance SR, quick play history. I don't know what to tell you. Nice. Post is not mine, but thanks for looking. Okay, no problem. Just wait till they add a new hero that's just Brig, but with a better bash and something like DM instead of Whipshot. Oh boy. Oh boy. That would be terrifying. Bat plus new support that gives team-wide damage reduction. No thank you. Ugh. That sounds way too powerful. I mean, unless you limit it to an aura like Lucio does, then it works. 1200 HP on Rhine Shield when he's solo tanking seems really dumb. Lack of a second tank is enough of a nerf for Rhine already. Rhine is an engine that likes other people to pour fuel into him. That's part of why Goats was so good and why he so frequently had the golds in Goats. So he gets Zarya bubbles, he gets DM, he gets Lucio speed, he gets healing from a flex support as well. He gets healing from 3 supports, not very much when you're running those 3 together. And he does a ton of work when he gets that much support, but he does significantly less work when he gets less support. Okay. Have they mentioned anything about a 6v6 arcade node? I don't think so. The counter buff is double fire strike and charge steering, which is probably not amazing. Yeah, not amazing is right. Okay. Tanks smashing into each other all the time. By God, it's the form's wet dream. Yeah, that's sort of the problem that you run into. I thought about doing a video on this, but I didn't. I may still end up doing one. But what you run into is people's preferred way to play the game is a poke brawl hybrid that's played completely wrong. They want Reinhardts smacking into each other or shielding. That's kind of what they want. Let's put it like this: Reinhardt here with a shield, Reinhardt here with a shield. Cool. Yeah, they like that. They want the other team's McCree to shoot at the Reinhardt shield while they shoot at, I don't know. We could say the other McCree, but that's giving too much credit. Let's say they shoot at, not the other DPS, they shoot at, let's say, the other Zarya. That's the wrong color. They want this set up, but they don't want to stand behind the Reinhardt shield themselves, which is okay with me because standing behind the Reinhardt shield isn't right. But it's you should shoot at the Reinhardt and his shield before shooting at me, and I'm also going to shoot at tanks, or maybe I'll shoot at the Reinhardt shield, this sort of thing. We're going to have Reinhardt shields that need to be shot at, but we're not going to shoot at off targets to make them go behind the Reinhardt shield. We're going to shoot at tanks, but we're not going to stand behind our Reinhardt shield. It's just a bad version. It's how the people. Anyway, we have a super chat coming in from Anon. Charge on CD here. Celebrating hitting diamond on Rhine today. Thanks for the coaching session. Now Rhine to Masters or learn Monkey to Diamond or Ball. All good options. All good options. Rhine to Masters is definitely doable. A lot of fun. We also see Monkey. I mean, I'm a Monkey fan. Monkey works, and Ball is quite strong right now. I would not underestimate Ball. So I think those are all good options. But congratulations on hitting diamond, and thank you for the $5 super chat. Sorry, Google Play wasn't playing nice with my main. My Rhine is nice. Temporal, say it. I know you know it. There you go. Your Rhine is nice. There you go. Good job. Before that, I was going over how people want to play the game is they want to play Poke Brawl, but they don't want to play Poke Brawl with lots of off angles or Poke Brawl with actual hard brawling. They want to play this weird way, and that's the unfortunate reality. The way that the majority of players want to play the game isn't like a right or good or terribly effective way to play the game. It's like you shoot at my Rhine shield while I shoot at whatever I want. But don't shoot at me. Don't be shooting at me. I don't want to go on an off angle where I'm in danger of getting shot at. I want you shooting at my Rhine. Anyway. Or, where, hey, I'm going down a tunnel and I could run into a tracer, run into a roadhog. No, that's scary. But anyway, that didn't happen. We'll move on. Okay. Support stroke 100 health per second. It takes being gods. Yeah. The game was terrible. They had Mercy and we didn't, so we lost. Ah, the Mercy meta, the Moth meta. Okay. Brawl, what are you going to do when Overwatch 2 comes out and you don't yet know how to coach it? I'll still be faster than other people to learn how to coach it. That's the answer. Like, I'm much better positioned to coach it, to learn how to coach it than other people. I don't intend to go, oh, I'm abandoning content creation to go full-time coach. Not at all. I don't think I'm going to have to be perfectly honest. I think I'm going to continue to be pretty good at this, and I'm going to see it in a way that apparently the pros don't, because the pros showed us in their public testing that, hey, they immediately made a lot of mistakes and immediately treated it like it was a new game when it's like, okay, there's things that are different, but hey guys, some of these fundamentals, most of these fundamentals are still here. Hey, work with what you know until there's a reason to change it, and reasons to change it might be, hey, there's only 5 heroes on the board, but let's make the adjustments based on what we see success on in scrims, that sort of thing, not throw it all in the junkyard and then, oh wait, yeah, this. Like, we have principles to work from. I think people appeal directly to the devs on Reddit too. You get a bit more self-moderation there. You do get a bit more self-moderation on Reddit for that sort of thing. And people do appeal directly to the devs, but they don't have the impression that the devs are looking the whole time, even though, yes, the devs are looking at Reddit. My favorite buff demands are when people ask for a quality of life change, which is really a massive buff. Oh, yeah, that was the popular one. Also, Ryan smashing into Ryan is the pinnacle of Overwatch. It's pretty fun. Don't get me wrong. Ryan smashing into Ryan is great. 6v6, 5v5. How about some 1v1? Okay. 2 Ryans, no items, final destination. Smash Bros. Memes. Okay. 5v5 all Ryans. Ah, is that as good as 6v6 all monkeys? Is that the new Overwatch 2 meta? The Overwatch 1 beta of, throw 6 monkeys, attack Planet of the Apes, that sort of thing, and now it's 5 Ryans? I don't think they'll let us do that. Okay. Okay, and before Temporal gets contract coaching in Owl for Overwatch 2? Could be. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think... Oh, Zergling's got one more thing. I don't agree that you don't get the impression devs don't look at Reddit, especially Arcow. You see a lot of people lobby there around stuff streamers say that then get experimented with. I really feel like they're more trying to convince each other, though. Like, it feels less like an appeal to the devs and more like, hey, I want to discuss this. And maybe that's just, an incorrect interpretation, and maybe that's what's happening on the forums too. But you see a lot more direct cries to blue, to devs on forums than you do on some of the Reddits here. We have 2 of the Reddits pulled up, competitive in Uni. Maybe that's less true on our Overwatch, though I don't think they get any traction on our Overwatch most of the time. So I sort of see what you're coming from, but I don't necessarily agree. Especially our cow, you see a lot of people lobby there to get stuff streamers say that I then get experimented with. Yeah, but that's sort of a let's drive the community in general on this. That's not really an appeal to the devs. And the devs are going to think about stuff that there's enough community drive behind. And I also do sort of appreciate that competitive Overwatch, at least initially, now competitive Overwatch has become more of a, let's talk about Owl, which is actually less interesting to me. Competitive Overwatch originally was sort of like, it didn't know what it wanted to be, but it was sort of a higher level version, more serious player discussion of stuff. Like, okay, we're going to throw a fair guide written up here by the number 2 fair. We're going to throw a tracer guide up here by this. And it got discussion, and it was a tougher to challenge Reddit. Like, they did a better job of policing, and they did a better job of dismissing opinions that were like, that opinion is garbage. It's not going to work competitively. Like, I want to say it was kind of a more discerning audience. It's not that anymore. It is far from that anymore. I would not give it those props anymore. But it had a little bit of that. Where it was like, hey, this was you have to sort of pass muster to make any argument for an argument to get any traction there. That's not true anymore. Now it's kind of oh, look, let's all just be Owl fans, and that's fine. Like, you can have a Owl fan subreddit. I think it's a little bit of a shame that it co-opted one that was pretty decent subreddit before that, but that's what happened. Personally, get the impression that they pay the most attention to Reddit. I think they do, but I don't necessarily think that's wrong. Like, it actually makes sense to pay more attention to something that isn't lobbying you the same way, because you want to see how your players are talking when they're not trying to lobby you, right? Like, you want to see what people are thinking of the game, how things are going, what they're thinking when it's a situation where they're just sort of talking amongst themselves, they're having a discussion. Oh, that's interesting. You want to see that much more than you want to see what they tell you when it comes to thinking about the game. My friend had a terrifying idea of Doomfist as a tank being able to punch vertically 360 degrees. I just wanted to mention that because Doomfist rocket punching fair from the floor sounds. Okay. Our cow isn't as good as our Overwatch because it doesn't have 5K Diva Bomb clips from quick play games. There you go. There you go. I would also argue that I see some of the most knee-jerk balance change based on complaints from Reddit. Okay, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. I find a lot of the time they don't get a ton of traction. Sometimes a pro will say something foolish. Like, I remember when our cow was like, okay, Mercy Res and Defense Matrix are stupid. And it's like, okay, stop it. You just don't like there being any defensive abilities. And there are going to be defensive abilities. This game is not a pure first person shooter. The game is going to have some things like, if DM is unfun and res is unfun and anything that provides any level of not letting you eliminate whatever you put your crosshair on is unfun, and monkeys appearing in your face is unfun. Yeah, well, that's not really the game. Like, you see stupid opinions there, you see stupid opinions everywhere. Welcome to the human condition. Like, I can pull that out. I'm not gonna pull out ones here because there's been so many of them here that it's sort of like, yes, I can do this for Arcao. And again, I am not putting Arcao on some pedestal. I do not think it now especially is some particularly amazing place, nor do I think this is some particularly amazing place. But I also I don't feel a need to be the champion for Overwatch University or Arcao or our Overwatch or the Blizzard forums. But I will stand by what I said there. I don't think that it's going to be a hugely good use of time to pour a bunch of attention from the devs into, let's try to make our forums better. Like, I think that's a bit of a fool's errand for the amount of effort it's going to take them. But hey, that's okay. It's like, what do they say about us when we're not in the room? Exactly. The worst is when people complain about shields and healing being unfun. Just play another game, for goodness sake. The game is not a pure first-person shooter yet. Calling it Arcow just sounds like a settle wave insulting it. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go ahead and call it there. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please drop a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you would like to catch these sorts of discussions in the future, please consider joining the Discord. In there, you can join to become a watcher, in which case you'll get pings if you like, so that you can see when we're going live, what topic we're talking about, all of that great stuff. Or you can sign up to get coaching. I do coaching for guys. You can see what that costs. It's fun. It helps you get better at the video game. All that good stuff. Smash the like button. Hit the notification bell. break the super chat button, comments, all that good stuff. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it there. I will see you in the next one.